Hi, welcome to Wetpixel Live. My name is Adam Hanlon. I'm the editor of Wetpixel, and I'd like to introduce our regular roving correspondent all the way from the south of England, Alex Mustard. Hey, Alex.
Hey, good to see you, Adam. I've actually been roving a little bit in the last few weeks before we got locked down, so it's making being locked down at home a little bit more bearable.
And
Escaped.
While you've been roving, a little bird told me you've been shooting one of these bits. So what I thought, we are planning, I have one too, as you can see, and we are planning a sort of full detailed review of its performance.
What a big one you've got, Adam.
And we are planning a full detailed review. But in the interim, we're back in lockdown here in the UK, so I can't get in the water with it. So I thought it would be interesting to compare our findings thus far on shooting with underwater. So Alex, I mean, how have you found shooting EMWL? What's worked, what hasn't?
I think it's a really interesting thing for us to talk about because it's by far the most exciting thing to occur in underwater photography this year. And given the fact that we're not able to travel and do exciting things a lot of the time, it is something to talk about. So I think it's a really good thing to talk about. Also, because it is such an innovative piece of kit, I think it's something that really deserves discussion because it's not like someone making a new dome port that's slightly different to an old dome port that maybe is slightly better. This is something really almost totally new.
And quite hard to understand. Yeah,
it's hard to understand, and it's well worth these sort of lengthy discussions.
Yeah.
I think the first thing I'd say, I was going to show you a picture of actually mounted on my Subal housing. This is the camera sitting on the grass at a dive site up in Scotland called Caddies. It's just a little village on Loch Lynne, just down from Fort William. And this is just a picture of my camera before the dive on the grass. It's the only picture I could get without daughter and dog in the frame as well. It was when people see it, they think, "Oh my God, that must be a real nightmare to deal with underwater." And I think perhaps the most surprising thing about it is how easy it is to shoot.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And it's. I have to say, I found it quite different to shoot to the old in-on bug eye lens, because the autofocus works, and it's when you dive with it set up like I've got it in this picture here with the big Popeye buoyancy arms as part of the setup, particularly on the forward part of the strobe arms.
Yeah,
it's pretty nicely balanced in the water, and I was very happy, and just hovering in the water, shooting it completely free floating, focusing on very tiny things from very close. And it was really, really stable and easy to use. And I think it's possible because the focus is nice and quick. So, you don't have to be completely frozen in the water for 20 seconds to get a shot. You can just be nice and stable 4 or 5 seconds and get your shot. Yeah. So I found it really easy to shoot. But I think using it in that setup with a nicely balanced housing and with these big float arms on the forward end of your strobes, as it is in my picture.
Yeah.
In terms of the lighting, I've actually been very happy just using the 2 forward push strobes.
Yeah.
When we talked, I think in a previous episode about how I used to shoot the in-on, with the in-on, I really felt I needed to kind of pipe using fiber optics the light right onto the port. But actually with this, I don't. One thing I have found unusual in the setup is that I've been diving a lot in Scotland. It's been very dark on a lot of the dives. There's often a peaty surface layer at the top, so it goes dark underwater. And a focus light is essential. With this, you need to make sure your focus light is a good long way forward.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it won't light. Otherwise, you get a big shadow from the front of the lens. So just as you get to the range where the camera is actually in the range where you want to take the photo, suddenly everything goes into darkness.
Yeah.
So you need that focus light far forward. Another thing I found in the shooting. Sorry, Adam, you going to say something?
Well, I was going to. Sorry, I'm just sort of going to, because some of the shooting I've done side by side comparisons with the lower 40mm lens, which is obviously a direct sort of competitor to the Nauticam one. And one of the things that really surprised me is quite how easy this is to use compared to the lower, particularly in somewhat more challenging diving conditions. So I was wearing dry gloves and dry suit and all the other paraphernalia that you need for cold water. the lower, given that it's manual focus and manual aperture, so I'm shooting on live view using peaking to get the focusing right, and it was really hard, particularly, I'd say given the equipment I was having to wear to stay warm. Whereas, with the Nauticam, I was finding that actually my success rate was much higher, simply because with autofocus, obviously with the conventional aperture on the dials on the housing, this made a huge difference to how easy it was to use. So I think one of the things Nauticam have done here is they've integrated this really well into the camera system, whereas some of the others seem to sort of bolted on. This is very much integrated, and a lot of people look at it and go, "Wow, this thing looks horrific to shoot," because it says when you get underwater. Just to echo what Alex has said, actually, yeah, okay, it sticks out the front, so you've got to be aware of that. But actually, the handling of it is really quite straightforward. It's not difficult to handle at all.
And it's not as difficult to handle out of the water, even as you might imagine. Particularly with this setup, I had it, with the. There's another picture I'd like just to show quickly, which is just us going, as three of us just going in for a dive in Loch Leven, up near Glencoe, for those that know this part of Scotland. And this was a shore dive, clambering down a bank across a rocky beach and into the water. And it was perfectly fine to carry down. It's nice and, it's quite well balanced. You can see I'm holding it there in the picture. And I was, perfectly comfortable, not really any worse than carrying a normal big camera down. In terms of in the water and how easy it is to shoot, while I was in Scotland, I actually did a wide angle shoot in a very unique environment. There's a loch called Loch Sween that's very shallow. And in the tidal race of that loch, there's an amazing garden of merle. Merle is a very slow-growing calcareous pink algae. Right. And habitats for it are very easily disturbed because it's so slow-growing. And one of the most amazing merle beds in the UK is this one in Loch Sween in Scotland. But it's right in a tidal race, so you have a relatively narrow window to go and dive it when the tide goes completely slack. Yeah. And I was going there and had one shot basically to shoot wide angle of it. And I was so confident using the EMWL by then, I actually chose to just use it as my wide angle lens. I knew that it would also allow me to go in and do some close-ups. But actually I went down with a dive. I had a fisheye in the car, and I actually thought the fisheye is probably a bit wide for this shoot. I'll just use the EMWL as my wide angle lens. Wow. And I was, hovering mid-water, shooting, quarter-second exposures very comfortably of scenery with this lens. And the image quality into the corners is sharp, and the pictures are great. It is an incredible optic, and it's so much easier to use than people might think.
And certainly, I was similar but different. I was shooting sturgeon in midwater, and I was able to hover with it quite comfortably. And one of the sturgeon in particular is quite big. He's probably 5.5 foot. He's a big guy, or girl, I don't know. And again, you can pretty much shoot as if you were shooting with a fisheye. It definitely gives you an option that you probably don't expect. Which I
think you do need to be on top of your diving skills, though. Both you and I, we're pretty solid blocks in the water. And I think but it's definitely those that feel confident in their stability in the water. I'd be interested to try it again in a wetsuit. I shot it at the beginning of the year in a wetsuit and don't remember feeling it was as easy to shoot as it is now. But I wasn't using it with my own housing. I was using it with a Nauticam housing, and which is not my, so there was that unfamiliarity. I didn't necessarily have the buoyancy arms on it. I don't remember what it had on it. And so there may have been quite a few differences. And I was still happy shooting it, but I definitely felt a more need to be rigid and maybe holding on to something, whereas the way I've been shooting it since then has been that. One thing I think I find difficult with shooting this type of lens is that the pictures are most effective as a close focus wide angle shot, as a balanced light exposure. And one of the difficulties I had shooting up in Scotland is, it was overcast and dark a lot there. The water was murky, and it was basically like being on an almost night dive. And in order to get enough depth of field when using these wide angle macro setups, you need to shop the lens down, or you need to accept that your subject is going to be sharp and your background is going to be blurred to the point that you almost can't make out what's in the background. You're just getting a feeling for it. And for me, if I'm going to shoot a wide angle macro, I want the background to be part of the picture too.
Part of the point, isn't it?
And that for me means I'm going to be generally shooting this thing at f/18, f/20,
Yeah.
And the problem I had with that in Scotland is by the time you stop down to that value, you need mega long exposures to get any sort of background light coming in.
Yeah.
And that was I found that quite challenging. It's harder to hold still for a 1 second exposure than a smaller dome would be, because it's got so much momentum of movement with that long stick, which doesn't suit the shooting technique very well. Maybe I would, for a future strip, maybe even put like a little monopod bracket on it or something, using their thing, so you can almost rest it on something on the seabed, so you've got a bit more stability. The other thing that you need when shooting like that is you need a torch or focus light that goes off when you take a picture and stays off for at least a second. Or you need, and actually what I found I ended up using a lot of the time for my balanced light photos is I would shoot them on front curtain sync so that the torch would go off at the beginning of the exposure. Otherwise, the torch would be on all the way through the exposure. And I would actually tended to use the focus lights of the flash guns as my focus light, because those would always turn off with the flash more reliably. One of my dive torches doesn't have the quench when the So when I was using that, I tended to use the focus light to find the subject. When I'd found a subject, then turn on the focus lights of the torch, of the strobes, I mean, and then use that cutout so that I didn't have any torch light during the long exposure, which obviously then gives you a horrible foreground ghosting effect. So that was something that, it's kind of specific to the darker conditions. But the reality is a lot of people are going to have that problem.
Actually, I have to say I found the same problem because I was also shooting in the UK and it was a gloomy day. I mean, the water conditions were actually quite good, the viz was quite good, but it was a gloomy day. So yeah, similar sort of problems.
And I said before, you need that focus light reaching forward, otherwise you get a massive shadow, particularly off the 130 lens.
Yeah. So I was going to mention that. So we probably need to talk a little bit about the various objectives that fit onto it. It comes with 3 options, which is a 130 degree, 100 degree, and a 60 degree.
I find them easy to understand by converting them into kind of a false focal length. And that a lot of us don't really 130 doesn't make sense. You say to people, it's the same as a 10mm wide angle on a full frame camera, but a macro lens 10mm. People go, wow, that sounds interesting. A lot more so than telling them it's a 130 degree. And then the 100 degree, that's like a 20mm macro. Now I have to say, I've never used the other one since I tried it. It's tight. It seems to be more of just a standard macro lens. And I found with this one, the 20mm, I could go and shoot, like, if I wanted to take a macro of a macro subject, I was like shooting brittle star centers with this, and just from this far away, and you can completely fill the frame with something this sort of size. And just shoot like just a standard macro shot, but just with this. So it's I found it very versatile, these two, and I didn't feel I needed the other accessory, this more super macro accessory.
So I did shoot with the 60, but I have to say primarily because I was testing, and it is very tight. It's very narrow. I thought, so as a kind of example, I thought the 60 would be really nice for nudie bank rhinophores, for example, where you're getting sort of I guess it's almost into super macro, but really kind of close detail of pretty small subjects. I think at that point, I'm not saying you can't do it with 100, you probably can, but the 60 I think would fit right into that. That was the sense I got from it. Was if I was trying to take the brachial plume of a nudie bank, for example, obviously with a close focus wide angle kind of look to it, which I thought actually could be quite a lot of fun to do. I haven't done it,
but it's not that wide. Once you get to 60mm, 60 degrees, sorry. It's not that wide a lens anymore, which is why I've not been so. That said, I will try it. I think the other thing I wanted to talk about is one of the reasons I didn't try it is Nauticam provide these very useful lens caddies that you can put onto any float arms. I've got them on the big buoyancy arms, and this is a great way to carry the second lens that you're not using. It just clips on. You just line it up and clip it on. Actually, I've only got one of these, which is maybe the other reason I don't take the 60 down. But I have to say, I would actually like to have 2 of these, but I would only still probably dive with one of the lenses, because when you change them underwater, you actually want somewhere to put the lens before you take the other one off. So actually what I would want is to have one of these on each side, take the optic off the front, attach it to the spare one, then put the other one on.
Yeah.
We were diving in very cold water. I was diving in wet gloves. My fingers were very cold on some of these dives. I was doing 80, 90-minute dives in very cold conditions, and my fingers were very cold, but I could still do it all. It wasn't always easy, but I could do it all. I wasn't changing it every 5 minutes. I'd tend to do 20 minutes with one. Oh, this subject really needs the other. Okay, change over 20 minutes with the other. But I found it was fine. I think the one area I didn't like was when I was boat diving with it, doing a blue or green water descent, and you have to open it all up and let the air out.
Yeah.
I felt very nervous doing that if I wasn't basically just above the seabed.
Yeah.
Because you're dealing with a lot of stuff with gloves on, cold hands, and these things, if you drop them, they're going to sink mega fast, and you don't want to drop them as well. And I found, like, juggling all this stuff, I'd take one off, shake it around, put it back on, take the next one off, shake it around, put it back on. That's quite a fiddly procedure in gloves in open water. So I would generally wait till I hit the seabed to do that.
Which again, I think the idea of having the two lens caddies, I hit on the same idea as well. I think what I would probably do is I would probably go in without an objective mounted, but have the two objectives on each lens caddy, and then I don't need to shake the bubbles off, and then it's just a question of shaking the bubbles off on the other end of it, which is sort of a bit more solid. So I think that certainly would be my way of managing it. I haven't used the flip adapter yet. I should preface that by saying I'm not a great fan of flip adapters, so it's probably not a great surprise to those people that know me and shoot with me. I also tend to think that by the time I've got my lighting set up for this lens, I'm probably not going to want to change everything around too often. I'm probably going to leave it as, and it's a really versatile combination. So
with these end pieces, it's super versatile.
I've got a whole bunch of things I can do. So in many ways, I don't need to flip it out the way, or I haven't needed
also,
to. Also,
it's actually, if you are going to change it, to press that one button, unscrew the whole thing, put it on the seabed next to you is almost easier than flipping it anyway.
Yeah.
I had the flip on it in Cayman, and the flip did work, I have to say, really well.
Yeah.
But I've not bothered to put it onto my system because, I didn't need it. I'd also say I really enjoyed shooting it more than I expected. And on my first trip to Scotland, I used it on the first day with the intention of, my plan before the trip is I took all the lenses. I was like, right, I'm going to do loads of different photography. And I kept it on for the whole trip because I really, really enjoyed it. On the second trip, where there were probably less subjects for it, I still shot it on 2 out of 9 dives. Yeah. So I was using it a lot. And that was after a previous trip of using it on every dive. Yeah. So it was really, I really liked shooting it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I enjoyed it very much as well.
And the image quality, for me, blows me away every time I use it.
Yeah.
I mean, the image quality is excellent. It really is.
Yeah. No. I think it's very exciting, and I think as Alex sort of started off, we're in a year where possibly we're not getting the opportunity to take pictures as often as we normally would. So it's really fun to be able to have an exciting piece of technology that's arrived that allows us to do things creatively. So it's really nice.
Yeah, the only thing I managed to lose one of the rubber lens caps already, which is a bit of a frustration. They are quite easy to lose. I think it'd be quite nice if Nauticam sold some spare sets for them, because particularly the Swarm, this one was quite easy to lose. I think, and another dive, actually, I forgot, and I was shore diving, and I found myself down on the beach with both lens caps on, and then I had to take them off, put them in my BC pocket for the dive, and then lucky, they were still there at the end of the dive. This one, I think it was on because I had it on in the car. And then I forgot to I took the one off, the one on the barrel, but didn't take this one off. And then I think I went in the water with it on, and by the time I'd swum around for a bit, it was gone. Yeah, so I was polluting the environment as well.
Yeah, I think there are logistical kind of things that I'm sure some kind of clever setup of doing that. And that does mention that the lens hoods as well. There's a really nice lens hood for the 130. Which fits onto it. There's one for
this one as well, actually. There's a little one for this. I've not.
I haven't got the little one. I've only got the big one. You've got the.
Well, I've not tried the little one, but So the lens, particularly when you do balanced light shots, I've found you sometimes get kind of like a semicircular reflection within it.
Yeah.
It may be caused by I'm not quite sure what's causing it, but if you put the lens hood on, I haven't got that reflection.
Yeah.
So it may be just when the light strikes this and just creates a little bit of internal flare or something. It's quite rare, but every now and again it comes up. Yeah. And with the hood on, I've never had it. Yeah. So the hoods have actually got this like Velcro loop, and you could actually keep it down on there all the time and then take it off. The downside though of having the hood on all the time is that if the hood is on all the time, if you're doing the close to the seabed stuff, this hood is going to stop you getting the camera close to the seabed, and this is also going to be one hell of a trowel for sand. And as soon as the sand starts piling up against this, it just goes jet black. I've had that a couple of times.
I think there's definitely going to be the possibility of taking a saw to the bottom petal of the hood possibly at some point, or having two hoods, one without a bottom petal.
That's the little one for this one.
Oh yeah, there you go. Yeah.
It's just got a little clip on one side. One other thing I would just quickly say is that I actually also shot mid-water subjects with it, and the autofocus, me hovering, the subject swimming in front of me, I was able to shoot a free-swimming epipod in mid-water squid perfectly happily with it, and actually was able to get my camera much closer to it because of the long distance of the tube than I would normally. So I think there's going to be a lot of really interesting images coming from this as people start to be able to get them into different environments and start racking up the dives.
Yeah. And it's not unique to this, but certainly animals don't react to it in the same way they do to having a dome shoved right up close to them. They seem to be
it's a much smaller front end.
They seem to be much more comfortable with it, so you can definitely sort of get it closer to subjects carefully, but get it closer to subjects than you could with a
and the mouth breather behind is a lot further away as well, you know.
So the irony is though, I mean, even with that, we're still behind it, but they seem to be able to ignore it.
I think it's about getting into their personal space or not. And I think the little thing doesn't. But I think what really made it useful for that is the fact that the autofocus works. Yes, so you can free swim with a free swimming subject. You can get the tube right up close to them. They don't run away, and it focuses really easily. So I can see people really, really enjoying them on blackwater dives. Because you get to literally get right up. I mean, I only tried it on one squid, but certainly for that type of subject, it was really easy to shoot. I got had a relatively brief encounter and got lots of pictures.
Yeah, it'd be very exciting. Yeah, I think this is great. I mean, it's a great thing about new tools like this is there's all sorts of creative ideas that are going to come, and that's really exciting thing to see. So, thank you for those insights, Alex. Where can people see pictures of the? Are you tagging your pictures, EMWL?
I haven't tagged them, so on my website they're not going to pick up like that. Right. But I have been sharing a few shots on Instagram recently, so I think I'm Alex Mustard 1 on Instagram, so you can see some shots with this lens. Obviously they're of creatures in sea lochs, are not necessarily the most charismatic subjects, but I think if you have any familiarity with that type of subject and you see the perspective of the images, it's really interesting. But I would definitely say that it was a frustration being in such a dark environment, not being able to open up those backgrounds as easily. And that will still be a problem in places like Lembe. It rains a lot in Lembe. If you're down at 20 meters in Lembe, there's not a lot of light. You're going to need to use long exposures to get those backgrounds sharp. And then you're going to have those problems that we talked about the fact that you need to use front curtain sync so that your focus lights go off for the exposure.
Oh, fascinating. That'd be very cool. And I'd like to thank Nauticam for sponsoring this episode. I'd like to thank you all for watching, and please feel free to give any feedback in the comment section or to give us a like if you enjoyed it. Thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you again soon.